Hey guys. Tonight we begin with something that has haunted historians, romantics, and probably every college freshman who once thought about majoring in classics before realizing they couldn't actually read Greek. Yes, it's time to talk about the Library of Alexandria. So get comfortable, maybe dim the lights, grab a blanket, put your phone just out of reach so you don't start doom scrolling in the middle of this. And let's drift together into the hazy world of what might have been if one of history's most famous collections of knowledge hadn't apparently gone up in flames. Now, I say apparently because, spoiler alert, no one is actually sure how the library was destroyed, or if it even was destroyed in the single, epic fireball of knowledge way people like to imagine. But we'll get there. For now, let's settle in slowly, like sliding into a lukewarm bath. A dream of infinite scrolls. The Library of Alexandria is one of those things that, by itself, has more myth than fact attached to it. Most people think of it as some colossal marble temple of wisdom, stuffed with scrolls containing everything humanity had ever learned until about the 3rd century BCE. They imagine marble floors, golden lamps, and some poor intern racing around with a ladder to fetch a papyrus scroll of, say, quantum physics for beginners that Aristotle conveniently left behind. The reality was a bit less cinematic. It was probably just a large, well-funded royal library built by the Ptolemies, the Greek kings who ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great, decided to die early because why not cause centuries of political chaos? The Ptolemies wanted Alexandria to be the intellectual capital of the world, so naturally, they decided to hoard as many texts as possible. Their policy was essentially, if a ship docked in Alexandria, the books on board had to be confiscated, copied, and added to the collection. The original stayed. The owners got the copies. Very generous. Nothing says welcome to Egypt like book theft disguised as cultural investment. At its height, the library may have held somewhere between 40,000 and 400,000 scrolls, which is a very historian way of saying we have no idea. But it was definitely massive for ancient standards, probably the largest in the world. What was in the library? This is the part where people let their imaginations run wild. According to some modern romanticism, the library contains lost plays of Sophocles, lost epics of Homer, secret histories of ancient empires, the blueprint for cold fusion, and maybe even the cure for baldness. And sure, maybe, but realistically, it was a lot of tax records, astrology manuals, and extremely detailed agricultural treatises, because ancient scholars were nerds, and farming was serious business. Still, it would have had treasures. Early works of science, the original writings of mathematicians like Euclid, maps of the known world, which was basically everything around the Mediterranean and some vague rumors about India, and yes, plays and poetry. Tons of poetry. Ancient people loved poetry. So while it wasn't the mythical treasure chest of infinite genius some people picture, it was still pretty extraordinary. The destruction problem. Now here's the sleepy twist. No one really knows what happened to the library. People like to imagine a single night of disaster, flames roaring into the sky, scrolls turning to ash, scholars weeping in the streets. But history refuses to give us that kind of cinematic closure. Some blame Julius Caesar, who in 48 BCE set fire to the ships in Alexandria's harbor during one of his classic, "Oops, I started a war again" episodes. The flames spread, maybe, possibly, into the library. Some sources say yes, others say no. Then there's Emperor Aurelian, a few centuries later, who fought battles in the city and probably didn't spare much thought for book preservation. Later still, Christians and Muslims have been blamed, usually in an overly simplistic, bad guys burn the knowledge kind of narrative that historians now roll their eyes at. The truth is, the library probably declined gradually. Scrolls don't last forever. Bugs, moisture, neglect, and a total lack of proper climate control did their part. And then wars, fires, and centuries of indifference probably finished the job. So instead of a dramatic inferno, it was more like leaving a cake out too long, slowly collapsing until eventually nothing was left. But what if it had survived? All right, here's where the imagination gets to stretch its legs. If the Library of Alexandria had survived, what would have changed? This is where you'll find two camps. One says nothing would be different. We'd still have TikTok. And the other says we'd already be living on Mars, powered by free energy after building robot servants in the 12th century. The truth is, as usual, probably somewhere in between. Let's think about what the library actually represented. It was an archive of the best knowledge the ancient Mediterranean world had to offer. Philosophy, science, medicine, geography, clays, politics. If it had survived intact, scholars in the Middle East and Islamic world, the Byzantine Empire, or even Renaissance Europe might have had access to materials that are now lost. That could have meant earlier advances in medicine, maybe faster developments in astronomy, or just better maps, which honestly would have saved a lot of sailors from accidentally dying in the Atlantic. But it wouldn't have been a magic shortcut to modernity, because knowledge is only part of the story. You also need the social, economic, and technological conditions to use it. You can have a scroll describing steam engines in 200 BCE, but if your economy runs on slavery and your metallurgy is terrible, you're not going to build trains. So maybe instead of flying cars by the Middle Ages, we'd have slightly better medical care, a few more preserved Greek plays, and a lot fewer gaps in our understanding of ancient science, which honestly would still be pretty nice. A gentle detour into lost works. Now, because this is a bedtime style monologue, let's slowly wander into the kind of things people think were lost in the library. One famous candidate is the work of Hero of Alexandria. He was a Greek engineer in the 1st century CE who actually did design a primitive steam engine. It spun around when heated, but no one thought to hook it up to a cart, because apparently making tiny temple toys was more fun than inventing locomotives. Hero's works survived in fragments. But imagine if earlier versions of similar inventions had been preserved and widely circulated. Would someone have taken the hint earlier? Maybe. Or maybe they just use it to make coffee machines for elite priests. Another lost work people like to fantasize about is the missing books of Livy, the Roman historian. He wrote a massive history of Rome, most of which is gone. If those had survived, we'd know a lot more about early Roman politics, which is thrilling if you're a Latin nerd, and less thrilling if you just want to know if there was a scroll about aliens. Spoiler, there wasn't. And of course, there's the possibility of more lost plays by Sophocles, Aeschylus, and Euripides. Today, we only have a handful of their works. Imagine if dozens more survived. Theater students everywhere would be even more insufferable. Let's be honest. The Library of Alexandria's myth is so powerful because people want to believe in it. It's the ultimate symbol of lost knowledge, a reminder that human history isn't just about discovery, it's also about forgetting. We don't actually know what we've lost, which means our imaginations get to fill the gap. Maybe the cure for cancer was in there. Maybe just a better recipe for lentil stew. Both would have been useful. But there's something soothing about the thought that once upon a time, there was a place where humans tried to gather